Okay, so good morning, Elena. Nice talking to you here, not just in physical work.
Good morning, Evgeny. Yeah, it's really nice. Finally, we found the time. We were intending to do that for a really long time. And finally, we are recording the podcast.
We're kind of coming from completely different backgrounds. I'm more architecture, design, hands-on, and you coming from an audit. And they have this idea to understand where is this collide and where is the intersection between audit and technical work and architecture.
Absolutely agree. And I'm not even from the audit itself. I'm more from the compliance governance background. So I have a law degree. My entire work was based on the going through that intertangled standards, law, legislation, international, to understand what applicable to the company, to be corporation, for example, international enterprises, who has the sites all over the world. So what particular, for example, copyright law will be applicable to different sites. And the ISO standards is really good for that because they covering not only technical part, not only legal part, but the entire management part. They explaining you step-by-step methodology, how to cover all of that.
I think in the technical domain, in technical realm, in people that are doing the execution, the hands-on work, people that are doing engineering, the moment you tell them, guys, we're going to become ISO compliant, they want to shoot themselves. Oh my God, why would we need to do this? It's torture. But I think they don't understand that there's actually a lot of good stuff can come from going through the process. It's not just the check become compliant. You can change and improve the way you work to actually improve the work by itself as well, and not just being annoying. And to
Absolutely.
add to this, when you say ISO or something else, is basically almost like a fire inspection. Do you have this part? Do you have that part? Yes, no. So there is a lot of dynamic approach. What if I have a different company? What if do you have MFA? Do you have NAT? Like I don't even have a network. Why do I need to have a network access control, for example? So there's many these ideas can I have. So I want to talk and understand how we can change people's perception about ISO and other compliances as well.
Interesting. Absolutely agree with you. In some countries, ISO certification perceived as a piece of paper. Reality is absolutely different, and this is piece of paper. But in fact, biggest company in the world, most famous names, they're using ISO standards not for the certification, but for unifying kind of like approach to KPIs, objectives to managing company. And they're using it sometimes not even certifying certain standards. If you came across to those companies who were famous for some data leak or breach or something like that, but at the same time they have, it seems like you're signing in, you have to prove what it's you have to show your passport, you have to show your driver license, you have to restore your password. They constantly in the news in some cases of selling data, leaking data. This problem is exactly when companies approaching security in some of the level from the technical perspective, from multi-factor authentication, but they're not looking at the whole picture. They're not covering that. For example, they have some weakest point. Let's say no any policies for remote employees. And they have a lot of outsourcing all over the world, Taiwan, China, Russia, Norway. And they have one policy for all those countries, despite all differences, all risk security differences. So that could be one of those problems, and ISO help you to kind of approach that from the big picture perspective. Another problem, it's not all people who working even with ISO, they know what is that. I do the training really often, and I do training especially on a site, on a client side, when I'm teaching in person 20, 30 people from informational security background, from the infrastructure security. You have kind of like touch to reality to understand what they think about that. And I really often to hear that they didn't expect it, what ISO can be that helpful. And they also didn't expect it what ISO auditing profession could be great addition to their skills as software engineers, as a security engineers. They don't understand what it's not standalone profession. It's more like a skills what added to any profession and give you high demand on the market, great retirement investment because you always will be in a high demand.
You didn't convince me yet, but we'll go there. Okay, we'll go with the flow. You mentioned that it's an interesting profession to become an auditor in ISO. Okay, so what does it mean? Who is eligible? What is the process, and why would they do it? So, if I'm an architect, if I'm a pen tester, if I'm a developer potential, or something else. So, what is the requirement? Why it's interesting, and what do you learn? And I guess what do you know?
First, let's start from what do you learn? When you an auditor, you have a rare chance to look behind the curtain of how it's made. You look behind the curtain, the process. Let's say you're working for the company where you orchestrate the entire network infrastructure. And no one allowed you to see how it's made in the different companies, especially at your competitors. But if you're an auditor, you have certain conflict of interest who you cannot audit, companies who you had financial interest or something like that. Probably your competitors will not allow you to audit you. But other big companies, when you audit them, you can see how people of your profession build the entire network infrastructure there. And that's all will be in here. It will all be in your experience for the future, probably implementation, improvement in your own company. So that adding to any profession to be able to see other people experience.
If I'm a network architect, as you mentioned, okay, for example, or solution architect, and I'm specify, maybe solution architects usually know quite a lot of different things, but let's say network architect, and I don't know cloud, can I still become an auditor? How if I don't understand the cloud?
Yeah, you still can become the auditor. It will be limited by a certain ISO. And to learn different areas, it's also possible because you need to learn processes and good practices, good security practices in other companies. The pathway of auditors depends on the industrial background, what you have in that particular area. So you have to have the auditing experience, but you also have to have knowledge about your role and your industry. For example, your network security architecture, and you working in a particular type of the company, let's say internet providers, or you're working in a software developers. So you know the processes, what's happening in that company step by step, from the point that they buying the traffic, or from the point that they have a tech spec from the customer, to the point that they releasing updates or releasing patches. So you know the entire cycle. And plus to that, you have to know the audit process. And as you see, it's not like a standalone profession where you have to be an auditor from the bachelor degree and study to be an auditor. No, you have to have your own profession. You have to know your industry.
So how you become an auditor in this case?
That's excellent question. So I feel that is some kind of conspiracy theory, because in our profession, people appear either randomly from case to case. For example, people working in some company and company certified by ISO, you start interviewed by auditors. You start facilitating audits. And after you decided, I can help my company to be to do the internal audit because I know how to do that. And finally, the next step, you will be doing ISO lead auditing. So it's kind of before you didn't even know what this profession exists, because people who coming to that profession, they coming after a certain job experience, not because they need that job experience, but because they didn't know about that profession before. And I want to change that. It's very ambitious goal.
So you're saying that I don't, for example, for SOC 2,
Yeah.
The requirement is actually become a chartered accountant because you need to be, as far as I know, at least.
Yes, for SOC 2 to sign the audit report, you need to be a CPA, a certified accountant. But SOC 2 never audited by one accountant because accountants usually they don't know anything about security practices. So it's usually a couple of people. One, the security professional, and another one is CPA.
But in ISO, you say not. You don't have to be.
No. But even SOC 2 based purely on ISO 27001. So usually the SOC 2 auditors, it's ISO 27001 auditor or security professional who knows 27001 and the accountant. I work with accountants closely in Russia on audits for 6-7 years. So it's kind of a really well benefited work if organized well. But accountant never auditing security on their own. So it's always the pair of people. ISO you can audit on your own, and the career pathway look like that. First, you learn the standards. I always suggesting it to people. It's a different level of understanding standards, but now we have ChatGPT, we have AI who can explain you any concept in a very simple terminology. And it's really hard for me to tell because I am a lawyer by degree. And for me, for all my life, reading standards, reading law, it's like a detective. I love it. I absolutely enjoy that. It's not any more fascinating reading than reading the standards. So when I'm saying it's easy, maybe it's not that easy, but now we have ChatGPT. So what I would suggest first, it's to buy those standards on ISO.org. It's the cheapest and it's primary source of information. It's the company, non-profit who developing those standards. So you're buying those standards, you're reading them. You kind of see the structure of those standards, how they walk company through the implementation process. And after if you work already in a company, you can offer to be a part of auditing team. All companies need that, especially companies who certified for ISO. The mandatory requirements is to have established internal audit processes. And internal audit processes covering a lot of areas: sales, marketing, HR, security, everything. So usually companies need a lot of auditors. And they will be happy to have you, to give you this opportunity to learn.
What if you're not working for a big company? Or let's say in my case, I work for a VAR, basically in the integrator.
Yeah.
The company need to be SOC 2 compliant, but not ISO compliant. And I mainly work on the client side.
Yeah.
So if somebody is independent or somebody doesn't work for a big company, how do they actually get this experience of the audit?
You can audit your own company, or you can offer to audit your vendors, because most of the time, to prove what your vendors are secure, you can only do this through the audit. It shouldn't be any certifiable or qualifiable audit. It can be internal audit what based on ISO standards. So you're choosing one standard what is more important for you. For example, ISO 20000, it's Internet Services Quality Standards. So internet services comparing to 9001, it's more, they more intangible. They depend on continuity and availability. So you can choose these standards, or you can choose 27001 as informational security or data privacy standards. So you're choosing the standards, you're offering them or to do audits. And at the end of the audit, to sell that audit, to sell this internal audit, you need to show what you will not be like angry inspector on kind of ticking the point, non-compliant, but you rather add value to the company. You rather will suggest them how they can improve quality on a low cost, or how they can improve security, just tweaking one small thing. Because you had this experience from different companies, you saw how it's working, so you can suggest them something. This one of the way to do that. And another way to do that is to look in your network, look at your consulting partners. Maybe they have already established internal audit or implementation services, and you can offer them to be that network security specialist or software development specialist or mechanical engineering specialist in their area and provide them services related to particular company, but at the same time you will be learning the audit process. You will have the auditing hours.
So we'll talk about the audit itself in a second, but I want to ask, okay, so somebody did that, somebody did internal audit. They need to, it's not they make themselves certified and now become an auditor. They need to show it to someone. This someone need to have certain credentials to say, okay, Evgeny, Elena, David, John, Julia, whatever it is, you did the work, you can move to the next stage. Here's your shield, here's your sword, here's your new crown.
That's a most misunderstanding area, how to become an auditor. And even most qualifying auditors don't really know that part because it's often chicken or egg, what first. So when you're starting, at the end, then you're qualifying as a lead auditor, you need to have certificate as a lead auditor, and you need to have at least 300 auditing hours in this particular area for this particular standard. So this is kind of beginning part. How you will get hours if you're not certified, right? And this where we coming to the egg or chicken part. You have 3 different type of the audit. One is a first party audit. It's basically when you're learning the audit and you're auditing yourself, your company. The first party audits, they dependent. You're auditing your own work, and it's not really independent audit because you just build the house, you check that and you say, yeah, it's a perfect job. I built a great house. So this is the first audit, but it's essential to kind of understand the standards, to have this even imaginary work to auditing your own company. And the second is a second party audit. Second party audit, it's internal audit. When you're auditing your own company, when you're auditing vendors or suppliers, when you're auditing any other company in the world, but at the end of your audit, you're not providing ISO certificates. So it's just the audit for the sake of the audit for adding value. The result of your work is the audit report with suggestion how to improve the company a certain part. And the internal audit can be applied not for the whole company, but let's say for only one department, one direction. And this way you're starting to develop these 300 hours. For that part, you don't need to be certified. So internal auditors, they can do the job if they prove by their resume what you know the industry and you know the standards.
Do you need like a mentor? Do you need somebody from the ISO organization to have like, okay, I'm going to review what Evgeny is doing and make sure he's doing this according to our standards and not cutting corners?
For qualification of internal auditor, the standards request you to look at the company qualification description. So it's completely depends on the company. If company says, you can audit us only if you tell us what you know the standards and you know our industry, that would be good enough for us. Because sometimes company value more knowledge of the standards and other experience from other companies rather than knowledge of the standards. The knowledge of the standards come onto scene later when you want to be audited for ISO 27001 for certification. Honestly, a lot of auditors and a lot of implementers, they working their entire life as uncertified auditors, as implementers, gathering this knowledge and experience. It's more cost-efficient work, honestly, because when you do it's for the certificate, it's very regulated area, very regulated. But when you do implementation and this stage of internal audit, you can choose only part of the company and audit it in a more detailed matter as you wish. So you can go through each process in more details. But first, you have to clarify from the company, do you have the particular requirements for internal auditors? And they can tell you, we don't have any, or they can tell you, oh yes, you have to be certified as internal auditor. Standard doesn't require you to certify to have some qualification as internal audit. But
how long it may take for someone to become a certified auditor?
The certifiable courses all over the internet, a lot of online courses, with prices from $300 to $2,000. And mostly cost depend. Some of them are self-studying, so you're basically taking the standards and preparing for exam. Usually you have 2 tries to pass the exam. Some of them have absolutely amazing lectures, online lectures, offline. I would suggest if you're completely new to the standards and you cannot read the standards and understand on your own, it's a completely new area, to choose first education with online courses. You can find it's for $1,500.
From time perspective, would you say 6 months, a year, 18 months, like to?
The course is 5 days. 5 days course. Yeah. 8 hours, 5 days course. But from my personal experience of teaching people, I would say 3 months. You have to go for the course. Do not do test right after, because you will have like 3-6 months to do test. Do the course, do the practice, try to practice audits, even if it will not be paid work, even if it will be more like abstract work on a vendor, suppliers, your own company. Do the audit first, after to review the course again, and only after do exam. Because people who usually do the 5 days exam, if 5 days course and exam, if they're completely new to the area, they don't know how to apply that. But the main point is, when you know how to audit, it's completely changing your perspective. It's changing your personality. You become an auditor. You're going on a long haul flight and the flight being delayed. You're already seeing all those multi-level processes behind delayed flights. You know what they do. Who decision is that? Or maybe not decision. Maybe it's some gaps in processes. So you start seeing the processes by only surfacing what you see. So it's become your second nature, and it's really great skills for any profession.
Want to dive in a bit more to the idea of like yes or no.
Yeah.
How do we actually doing the process? Because you mentioned several times, it's amazing how you can help the company to become better and not just say, no, you're doing bad.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this part. How the qualification, the certification, the questions are going, and how we can actually help people, because people assuming if you didn't pass a certain amount of controls, you're not going to be past the ISO certification.
So when you're auditing, it depends on audit objectives. Of course, if you're auditing for ISO certificate, the objective is to get the certificate. But if we're going deeper into the audit, especially in internal audit, which I absolutely love, I think it's adding a lot of value to the company with small expenses, you have to define the objectives. And you're defining objectives of what company want to improve, what's important for them. For example, they're saying to you, we want to improve the security. Just tell us how to be more secure. For that, the improving security will be your objectives. So you first will look at the company objectives, what they want to achieve in the next 2 or 3 years. What is their expansion rate? Do they want to acquire a lot of high-risk companies? Do they want to acquire companies in the high-risk countries? So the objective of the company is very important, because they're not related to the risk directly, but they can alter the current picture of the risk. And after, you asking them, what is your high risk right now? How you evaluated that? What is your processes? What you put evaluation of the risk? So you're looking into the risk assessment. And you look if company evaluating risk assessment like a dancing around the fire, or they really do the great job, but they just missing huge direction. For example, they're not evaluating vendors properly, or they're not evaluating employees risk, or outsource services, or they only concentrated on some kind of narrow direction. A lot of companies, especially well-established companies, small or big, they need this fresh look. So they always in that kind of boiling soup for ages, and they think they're doing everything right. But in fact, then you're coming and look at those processes with your fresh view. You're saying, listen, guys, this is your objectives, but in fact, you have the entire area exposed here. You didn't do anything here. So it's not even to set your expectation right. and have some kind of ideal picture in the head. Oh, when I come, I will tick all these boxes and this will be done. No, it's to have this fresh independent view. The main mandatory requirement in ISO for the internal auditors, not certification and not even qualification. The most mandatory requirements is to be independent from the area what auditor auditing. And this is kind of the essential concept to understand that. You cannot audit the area where you had some investment into implementation or where you build something, because you already don't have the fresh view. You already know
You cannot audit your own work in a way.
Exactly. Or quality of work of your dear friends, of your dear colleague. So you know everything and you're not objective. And this is the main mandatory requirements, what your auditing company or your auditing area, even in your own company, your auditing area, which you know less about. You know how the processes should build, but you don't know how they built in your company. And you asking not really convenient questions. You asking maybe stupid questions, but it helps to reveal gaps in the processes.
Let's talk about the gaps, maturity, and compliance in general. There's this idea that if you compliant, it doesn't mean you're secure.
That's absolutely true. When you compliant with ISO standards, you have to prove one point. And this one point, it's not compliance with the controls, and it's not compliance with all requirements of the standards. One point of compliance with ISO standards is continuous improvement of the system. So you have the certain system. What set up with established, it's called PDCA, Plan Do Check Act, but in humanly understandable words, I would say it's based on what management or owners of the company decided to do, what vision they had, how they communicated this vision to every single person in the company, meaning how they communicated to managers, how managers communicated to everyone, and how everyone communicated it to external vendors and outsourced people, and how all those people reported back what's happening. So that cycle, it's a system with negative or positive feedback. And the system should develop by the spiral, not be downgraded by upgraded.
Need to be improved.
Yeah.
So it's not the first audit, it's internal audit, then external audit, and then we see progress according to time.
Absolutely. So through the audit, you receiving positive or negative feedback, and you improving the system. And for us, you complying to ISO standards if we see what system went to another circle with positive development. If we see the stagnation in the system, if the system is not moving, it means it's not developing.
So I want to dive into something I think even more interesting. Because as you're saying, we can see the changes. We want to see the changes positively. We hope they're positive. But in the same time, we build metrics. And we build metrics because we want to understand maturity of the company. In the end of the day, I understanding what you are right now, and I want your maturity to go higher. Like I always give an example. I can write a policy that you cannot upload customer information. They're going to be like basic. Then I can probably build a control to actually understand if you're doing something like that, to understand that you're uploading information to the internet. Maturity will go higher. Or I can build another control, like we have a procedure that is telling us not to do it, that actually prevent me to do this information because I know it is, and I will able to stop this. So I'm kind of maturing in my idea and my procedure, my policy. How's, in this case, ISO compliance in general help me with my maturity?
ISO mature management system is when you're finding what to improve, maybe through the audit, maybe through the customer compliance, maybe through the suggestion of continuous improvement from the security engineers, from any people of the company, and you fix it if it's cost efficient, and your system is improving and maturing every cycle. So for that, we usually, as an auditor, we're looking not on the cases, what non-conformities were raised, or what continuous improvement ideas were implemented, what new project were implemented as improvement of the system, as maturity of the system. We're looking at the establishing processes. For example, do you have established process for internal audit, regular internal audit, or you do this only once per 5 years on a random topic? Do you have this established process of capturing continuous improvement ideas? Let's say somebody decided that implementation will improve greatly company. Who they send this, how it will be evaluated, will they receive some feedback? So that established continuous improvement process what will eventually create the maturity of management system. And another one, when company moving by the spiral management system, it's usually moving around the axis of the target and objectives. It's a strategic goal what companies set up, what cascaded on the annual goal and KPIs. This is the most interesting part. A lot of companies, especially big companies, especially companies small with multi-products, multi-country sites or multi-country customers, they do not establish in KPIs right. So one objectives, one KPI for the company is good. Most of the time, our KPI to be profitable. Of course, that's understandable. But how it can be impacted to be profitable from the tech support, for example, team? They don't have direct impact on to be profitable. Sometimes they're just supporting business, or the same like a tax agent. How they impact the company to be profitable, it's not direct, it's indirect impact. It's more descriptive on the environmental perspective. It's kind of most understandable. For example, the company have the environmental goal, zero carbon for the entire company, for all units, to zero carbon for all sites. So you have to give the task to manager, to particular manager, to think how my employees can add to that goal. And what happened? Let's say company has 2 units. One is the office unit, and one is site who do completely manufacturing, building, assembling computers, developing software, installing software on those computers. Both those sites have zero carbon goal, and they decided to achieve zero carbon goal, we will be saving on electricity. We will install saving energy bulbs, we will be turning off lights, and our chart on consumption of electrical energy, that will be our KPIs. And whoever decrease that will be on top of all company. But the company who do production, who actually earning for these office people money, they have a great disadvantage, because their production rate directly dependent on how much electricity they're spending. And they can only save electricity when they shut everything down and they will not be working. But
counterproductive.
Exactly. But still company collecting these KPIs and saying, this office site doing great for the second year, they're turning off bulbs, but this production, they're doing really bad. Yes, the company KPI to do the zero carbon is great, but you have to divide it on a different, absolutely different KPI for different units. For example, the unit who does production, they plug into the grid nuclear energy, electrical energy, or they plug into the grid to the wind energy. That will be their part. And the same with security. You cannot tell people, don't use mobile devices, don't work in a cafe, don't work in an airport, if the sense of the work, the production rate, based on what they're working remotely, they always travel. So it will not be working like that. And this is why one KPI in the security and environment and quality will not work for everyone. So this is the line manager job, to think what will be your people doing to achieve that company KPI. But it shouldn't be one KPI. It should be different with moving toward one goal. I don't know how to translate that, but this is excellent story, old Russian story about swan лебедь, рак и щука, swan,
Yeah.
when
Вырежем
you're moving in a different directions and you will not be achieving that goal. For the company, adding value will be your fresh perspective. And this is why I always tell my auditors, my main job is to hire and train auditors in a company. And I always tell auditors what you can find 0 non-conformities in a company, but you must suggest at least 10 OFI. Opportunity for improvement, they're not mandatory, but they adding value to the company. They can decide, no, we will not be doing that. No, it's really not cost efficient. But you trigger something to think for them in a different direction. You open to them something what they never thought about. And this is the huge value of the audit. I really wish there will be new people in our profession to have auditing skills.
We have a few other ideas we can talk about it, like maturity and how show maturity. I hope people learned a lot. I learned myself as well. So thank you very much.